Well, what do you know? The Atlanta Falcons are doing Falcon things, and the NFC South, dare I say, is wide open. It's Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On NFL crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can hear Panthers and Bucs coverage every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching our shows right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today, once again, is Crossover Thursday, presented by our friends over at PrizePicks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Carolina Panthers host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 4:05 Eastern Time. Strange enough, we're playing a game in the NFC South at 4 o'clock in November. Okay, cool. Let's do it. James Yarcho, the host of Locked On Bucs. I'm, of course, Julian Council, host of Locked On Panthers. And as I said in that cold open, the Falcons are not good, man. And they have left the door wide open for Tampa to slip back in there, and quite possibly Carolina, who almost shocked the NFL last week against Kansas City. Maybe with the win on Sunday, they could be in a conversation for the NFC South Division title. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How about yourself? You got yourself a fun team to cover all of a sudden.
Yeah, all of a sudden, it was 3 straight weeks where the Panthers hadn't lost a game. You look at last week, we're big on moral victories here in Carolina. As long as they look competent, that's been good enough the last couple of years. But when they look competent and Bryce Young plays that well against the Chiefs, it's as much of a win for Carolina as it was a loss in that hard-fought loss on Sunday against Kansas City. But for y'all, looking like the team that we were waiting for. I know that Mike Evans has been out, but he came back now. Chris Godwin, unfortunate situation there. Baker's still doing his thing. Tampa's looking like they could be right there in a division title. And looking at their offense, what's the biggest story heading into this matchup on Sunday?
I think it's really the emergence of Bucky Irving, right? This has been something that's been developing throughout the season, but it was on full display against the New York Giants. 151 total yards. Had the touchdown, had the 56-yard run with Baker as his lead blocker, chasing everybody down to get out in front and help clear the way for Bucky Irving. So it's been a steady increase for his usage. And now all of a sudden, he comes out of this game against New York with as many touches as Rachaad White and Sean Tucker had combined. I think that's going to continue. And something that was talked about on my show earlier this week was it was kind of game script oriented with Bucky. It's really been the first time that the Bucs have really just taken it to a team and had such a substantial lead. And when they're running the ball, they want to run with Bucky Irving. Rashaad's still the better pass blocker. He's still, overall the more effective pass catcher, even though Bucky can do that. But when it's a run script for the Buccaneers, they want the ball in Bucky's hands. And he showed exactly why. Very rarely makes the first guy miss. He's just on the cusp of being in the top 20 in the NFL in successful run rate. So he's really just starting to blow up. And I think it could be a real interesting rest of the season for Bucky Irving. Might get into that rookie of the year conversation. I think Jaden Daniels he's a little too far ahead. Bo Nix is a little too far ahead, but might start to get, others receiving votes kind of consideration here.
Okay, well, here's an idea for Bucky Irving. If he wants to overtake his former Oregon teammate, Bo Nix, maybe the Bucs should line him up at quarterback a couple of times, run the Wildcat. That may allow him the opportunity. As we know, all these offensive awards apparently are now just quarterback awards, because that's the only position that apparently matters in the NFL, and that everything else no longer exists, which is still ridiculous. But for Tampa to put the hammer down on New York against a team that made a football decision last week, putting that in air quotes by putting in Tommy DeVito over Daniel Jones. And then, it's all about the money, the injury settlement. That would have been $23 million potentially had he gotten injured. That's why they made it, because no one in their right mind goes to Tommy DeVito. And then you find out on Wednesday, Brian Daboll saying, actually, Drew Lock is our quarterback now. It's like, okay, you totally know what you're doing here. That's a great sign for Tampa, a team that was coming off 4 straight losses. And like, you look at the point differential right now, they're sitting at plus 36 in the division, and just overall, while Atlanta's at minus 30. Like, this clearly, to me, James, looking at is the best team in the NFC South right now.
Yeah, and I mentioned it on the squad show. David Harrison called me crazy. Aaron Freeman laughed at me. Bucs they're going to the playoffs, and I think they're winning the division. Look, the Atlanta Falcons have won 1 game against a team 500 or better. They have 3 of their remaining 6 on the schedule against teams 500 or better. The Bucs play 1, and it's the Chargers. If the Bucs beat the teams that they should beat that are below 500, and
sure,
do Falcons things, that means the Bucs are sitting at 10-7. The Falcons are sitting at 9-8, and there you go. The Bucs win the division yet again. But the way that they're playing, even with the defensive struggles, the defense they've been beaten up, they've been battered, they have not played well. But even in spite of all of that, this is still going to be a team that could find themselves in the playoffs because the offense has just been so outstanding.
Yeah, and the thing about Atlanta, too, is like when they lose in laughers. The Broncos beat them by 32 points. That was the worst loss by an NFC South team against Denver, who swept the division this year. The Seahawks beat them by 20. Like, they just get embarrassed every single time they go out there. And it's just, it's an unserious franchise, and they're just not going to get it done, it looks like. And it's up to either Carolina, right now looks like Tampa, who's only a game back, to step up and to have a team that is legitimate, go to the playoffs and represent the NFC South like y'all did last year, getting that win against the Eagles. And like the Falcons have the Chargers, I don't see that being a victory. You got the Vikings, they have the Commanders, and they still got to play Carolina rest of the way too. I think they're coming back. And I felt like going into last week, 8-9 might be good enough. Like 9-8 for sure is going to win the NFC South this year. But looking at the defense for Tampa heading into this game, what's the biggest story defensively for a unit that you said has had its struggles this season?
It's the same story every week. It's just different people that we're talking about, and it's the injuries. Jordan Whitehead is going to miss time with a torn pectoral muscle. It does not require surgery. It is potentially not season ending, depending on whether or not they make the playoffs. But that's a huge blow right after they get Mike Edwards back in the fold and reunite Mike Edwards, Jordan Whitehead, and Antoine Winfield Jr. in the back end of that defense. So that really stinks for the Buccaneers. And then you have Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, one of the edge rushers. He sprained his ankle. He's probably not playing this week. You have rookie corner Tyke Smith, who has been their starting nickel for the majority of the year. He did not practice on Wednesday. He missed last week, got injured against the 49ers, and then had the bye week and still has not been able to return. And then new cornerback Troy Hill also did not practice on Wednesday. So who knows if he's going to be able to play or not. Yeah. And who knows if he's going to be able to play or not. So it's great that they got Jamel Dean back, and then Zion McCollum has been playing fantastic. But now all of a sudden you lose 3 more players in your secondary. You lose one of your starting edge rushers for an edge rush that isn't all that great to begin with. And I'm not saying that I'm a conspiracy theorist, Julian, but Joe Tryon-Shoyinka spraining his ankle, and then the next day Shaq Barrett being like, you know what, I want to play again. The timing is interesting. I'll say that.
Yeah, let's dive into that real quick. I know I saw that report. Apparently the Dolphins, right, have the rights to him to be able to play. So Tampa would have to trade for him, my understanding, in order to get him to come back.
Yeah, trade for him, or Miami could release him.
Okay.
They could do him a solid and say, you know what, we know you want to come back. He had told Kay Adams after he retired that the only team that he would come back for is the Buccaneers. And it would have to be the right situation. This seems like it would be the right situation. But yeah, I mean, if his application gets approved, he is contractually obligated to play for the Dolphins. So past the trade deadline, I don't know exactly how that would work out. But they could do him a solid and release him and say, go play where you want. We've come this far without you. We don't need you to come in now.
And it's not like Miami is in the NFC, so it's not really hurting them all that much, if at all, to let him go. And I do love that when the vets decide, you know what? I haven't got to go through training camp or the first couple months of the season, but I feel pretty good. I'll come play for the stretch run and go to the playoffs and potentially go after another Super Bowl ring. Like, that's what I would do if I was a veteran, like 35 years old. He's not that old, but I would be one of those guys say, you know what? Well, I can go out there, play a couple of games. You give me opportunity, coach. And, I'll take some money too. So we'll see how that develops for Tampa, a team that was only one game back in the NFC South division standings, a team that right now, looking at point differential, is the best team in the NFC South at plus 36. Atlanta was at minus 30. New Orleans somehow is at plus 2. Carolina, league low minus 146, but they've been better the last couple of weeks. So we've seen that recently. So we talked about the Tampa side of things in this matchup. Let's talk about the Carolina side of things. Bryce Young, he's getting the ball once again on Sunday. It's Locked On Panthers, it's Locked On Bucs, and it's Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday, presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets, all on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And looking at the bets for this week, the Bucs right now are sitting steady at minus 5.5 as road favorites, minus 250 money line. The over-under set at 46.5. Carolina, you want to get money line, it's plus 205 as they try to go out there, get the win. And Tampa Bay tries to go out there and potentially be tied for the division lead on Sunday afternoon. They can get that win here in Charlotte. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. It's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs. The Bucs and the Panthers facing off here at Bank of America Stadium, 4:05 Eastern Time, Week 13 matchup, and an opportunity for Tampa potentially go into first place, at least be tied for first place in the NFC South. And man, how in the world did the Bucs lose to this Falcons team twice this year, James? Like, how is that even a thing?
Okay, so what had happened was the Thursday night game, they thought they had it won. They didn't realize that the clock was a thing, and they gave it away. And then the second time, for whatever reason, the only game in the NFL that week that didn't have a pylon cam awarded Kyle Pitts a touchdown that he didn't deserve because Antoine Winfield did Antoine Winfield things and knocked it out of Pitts' hand at the goal line. It is what it is. I mean, I don't know. That's all for you.
See, the Bucs would have got away with it if it wasn't for those meddling kids and that missing pylon cam. Apparently, that's what you're telling me about 100%. That. 100%. So I think they're a better team than Atlanta. We'll see how it plays out the rest of the way, and it would be deeply hilarious to see the Falcons just fall apart like that. I know that Bucs fans will take great joy. Panther fans certainly will take great joy in that, considering they seem to be the team heading into the NFC South this year in the offseason. I know you felt differently. I went with Atlanta. I fell for it. And maybe I end up being right. Never wrong, just early. So we'll see if they end up winning it or not. But looking at Carolina, though, like, things have turned around. The vibes, they're good. And I didn't expect to have these vibes heading into December after Carolina's played basically their best month of football in November in a while, after beating New Orleans, winning in Munich against the Giants, having that bye week where they were getting healthier than last week against Kansas City, where I gave them a chance. I didn't think they'd win that game, but had they converted into red zone, possibly they win that game. And because the Panthers' vibes have been up and that they've been winning games and that Bryce Young has been playing well, he's getting a second opportunity here in Carolina to prove that he is the Panthers quarterback. And Dave Canales asked about it again on Wednesday, whether this is going to be Bryce's job the rest of the way. And he's still taking it week to week. A portion of his quote was, as he continues to show his progress that we're looking for, he continues to earn these moments. Yeah, he'll be in there. That's what I've been most excited about. There's a weekly growth that's happening. Again, we're just taking it a week at a time, and that's been my language, but he's really taking responsibility of it and pushing us that way. And the bottom line is he's giving us a chance to win in these weeks, and he's been playing. So he's helping him win games. And it's interesting because Dave Canales is very steadfast that Andy Dalton gave him the best opportunity to win. And then Andy Dalton the next day gets in a car accident, sprains his thumb, and he was forced to play Bryce Young, who now is starting to play good football again and looking like maybe the Panthers didn't completely get it wrong 18 months ago when they traded up to number 1 to go get him. So we'll see if he can earn another opportunity next week in Philadelphia if he plays well on Sunday against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and it's certainly been interesting from the outside looking in because I felt that Bryce Young's benching kind of allowed him to just take a
Sure.
breath and get his legs under him and start to learn Dave Canales' system, start to build a rapport and not have so much pressure on him. And then when he got a second opportunity, now all of a sudden he's looking far more comfortable. He's looking far more confident. And this is eerily similar to what happened with the Buccaneers last year under Dave Canales, where they had a rough stretch there in the middle of the season, and then it was November and December where the Bucs and more notably the offense got really hot. So it almost looks like the same thing could be happening in Carolina. And credit to Dave Canales, man. I did not think that he was going to be ready for this job. I thought of all the head coaching jobs, Carolina was not the one that he should have taken after just 1 year of an offensive coordinator. But it seems like, as he said, going a week at a time, it feels like he's getting better each and every week, much like Bryce Young. And when you have a young head coach who's a first-time head coach, a young quarterback, a young franchise that has been at the bottom, that's what you want to see week to week. They don't have to win every time, but if you see the growth, you see the competitiveness, 2 out of their last 3 they've won. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bryce Young has turned the ball over once in the last 3 games.
Well, it wasn't him. It was actually Xavier Legette having the ball stripped from him. That turned out to be an interception. So,
okay.
Yeah, he hasn't turned the ball over at all.
Yeah. So protecting the football, growing with your head coach, they look like a much better football team.
Yeah, it's interesting because the situation here was Dave benched him after 2 weeks. Andy Dalton came in, looked great in that Raiders game, and it felt like it was Andy Dalton's team. And I came up here and said, yeah, I mean, this is Andy's team. And hand up, clearly right now it's not Andy Dalton's team. So I'm sitting here, I'm willing to say that, hey, got that one wrong. But all the messaging was that this was not about a timeout for Bryce. This was not about development and going back to Bryce later on this season. It was about Andy Dalton. It was about getting him playing his best football with the guys that are out there. And then Andy gets in a car accident. So I'm not inclined to give Dave Canales any credit at all, because from everything that he was saying to us, that he was not going back to Bryce. It took a car accident for Bryce Young to get out there again. So I'm having a hard time sitting here and be like, oh yeah, bravo, Dave Canales' master plan to bench Bryce, put in Andy Dalton. Andy's playing well, then not well. Then he had someone go crash in Andy Dalton's car and get him injured. Was that him? Was he driving the vehicle? That's the only way I could give him credit, because right now it's been Bryce who's done all these things. It's not been the coach who had any confidence in him. That first game against Denver, refused to have him throw the ball down the field until garbage time, where it's, maybe he's connecting on some throws. And he admitted as much that I haven't given Bryce that many opportunities. Okay, so you didn't believe in him. So I just have a hard time sitting here and being like, yeah, this is the offense coming together because of Dave Canales' grand plan. No, Dave Canales was done with this dude, and then Andy Dalton got in a car accident, and now we sit here. But you do bring up a good point about how the Bucs offense really got clicking in the second half of the season. But I don't recall Baker Mayfield being benched for 5 weeks in the middle of it, though. That's the only.
No, he definitely wasn't, but there were those times, there were those games where Baker would only throw the ball 14 or 15 times. Yeah. Because if there's one thing we know about Dave Canales, love him or hate him, he is going to be stubborn about the run game. And even when you're running back averaging 1.2 yards per carry, he's gonna keep doing it. And the other thing about his offense is it may start off you may score on the opening drive. Or no, never mind. It's Dave Canales. You may score on the second drive, and then you're going to score on the third drive. But then you're going to go 4 straight possessions where you punt, and 3 of those are going to be 3 and outs. But then you're going to score on your last 2 possessions, and it makes it look like it was actually a solid outing because you put up 28 points. So it's the ebbs and flows of Dave Canales are certainly they're enough to turn your hair gray.
Yeah, and we're going through them right now in Carolina. The stubborn, he said when he came here, he's like, I'm going to be stubborn about running the football. And there have been plenty of times where that has not really happened. So that's interesting, where when he said that, I think about last Sunday, Chuba Hubbard, who is coming off of a career high in rushing attempts and yardage and an overtime win in Munich against the Giants. The Panthers just paid him. He got 2 carries for 4 yards in that first half on Sunday. But then they came out after halftime. He got 7 carries for 30 yards on an opening drive where they scored a touchdown. So he's stubborn sometimes about running the football, but he's a young guy, and I'm giving him some grace. I understand, like, he's a young guy as far as like a play caller in the NFL. It's going to take some time. I'm just a little skeptical of whether he really wanted to go back to Bryce Young or not, because it seemed pretty obvious that he wasn't going to go back to him unless forced to, which is where they're at. As far as the defense goes, like, there's not really a big story heading into this game. Like, DJ Wonnum, he's come back. He's had 2 sacks. He's had 2 sacks over the last 2 weeks, so a sack in each of the games. He's played well. I had someone ask me on the mailbag episode I did yesterday, being like, hey, should the Panthers go ahead and give him a 4 to 5 year deal? So maybe we should wait to see what he does for the final 6 games. If he goes out there and has like 12 sacks over the final 6 weeks, then sure, give him a bunch of money. But instead, let's be patient and let him play out the rest of this 2-year, $12.5 million deal, which is obviously a bargain for the Panthers, getting an edge rusher there. But defensively, they're getting healthier. They didn't really get a ton of stops last week. They got back-to-back stops. It took them until 7:01 left in the game for the Chiefs to punt for the first time all day. They did get 5 sacks last week, which is the most they've had so far this season. They've been at the bottom of the NFL when it comes to sacks the last 2 years. Last year, they had Brian Burns. This year, they very much do not have Brian Burns. But that was something that was quite shocking to me, quite honestly. And I'm curious to see if that carries over to this week against Tampa, as Panthers are going to need to have a pass rush against Baker Mayfield if they're going to get a chance to win this game on Sunday. So not much going on with the Panthers defense other than they're a little bit healthier, got some sacks last week, and, we'll see what they can do. So we talked about the Panthers side of things. We've talked about the Bucs side of things. We both understand, and you especially, this is an important game in the NFC South, and for an opportunity for one of these teams to potentially go up there and steal division away, or just take it, because Atlanta's just really going to give it away based off of how they're playing so far this season. We'll talk about the 3 biggest things each team must do on Sunday to win here in just a moment on this Locked On Panthers, Locked On Bucs, Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday edition of our shows. Football season is back, and the best way to get to games this fall is with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to say more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And you know what? Let me go to Game Time right now. See how much these tickets cost for all the folks out there who may want to travel from Tampa here this holiday weekend and come see their Bucs lose to the Carolina Panthers, or I don't know, maybe they'll win the game. Looking at it right now on Game Time, these tickets are $28. That's the cheapest ticket. Not bad deal at all. And if you use Game Time, you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, which means $8 tickets, y'all. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. It's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Welcome back to this Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday edition, brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the app and use code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers. He is James Yarcho, the host of Locked On Bucs. It is a big game in the NFC South this Sunday, 4:05 Eastern Time, inside Bank of America Stadium. The Falcons are sitting at 6-5. And they're facing off against the Chargers on Sunday. I think they're going to lose that game. Tampa sitting at 5-6, 1 game back of a team that has a tiebreaker over them. Carolina sitting at 3-8. There is opportunity abound for both these teams in the final 6 weeks of the season if they can win out potentially. Certainly for Tampa, you win out, you're going to win the division. But for Carolina, not much margin for error for them. They would likely need to go 9-8 in order to win this division. Big divisional round game, and you did not expect that to happen December 1st between, I think, at least for Carolina. I didn't think they'd be in a game at this point in time based on how things were going earlier this season, but they're in it, James. And there are 3 things that the Bucs must do, the 3 things that the Panthers must do. What are the 3 things that Tampa must do in order to come out on top and get back to 500 and have a chance to possibly be in first place in the NFC South come Sunday evening?
They have to dominate in the run game. They have to keep the pressure high, and they cannot beat themselves. I talked about it at the top of the show, Bucky Irving and his explosive game against the Giants. The Giants were the worst team in the NFL in allowing 25-plus yard runs this season. The Carolina Panthers dead last in yards allowed on the ground per game at 160. The Bucs are 10th in the NFL in running the ball, averaging 128 yards. This is going to be another Bucky Irving game. He is going to set the tone early. You're going to have Rashad playing his role. You're going to have Sean Tucker playing his role. but this is going to be Bucky Irving setting the tone. The first guy that gets to him is not going to take him down. He had 87 rushing yards last week against the Giants. He had 89 rushing yards after contact. The first guy is not taking him down. So he's a slippery, quick dude, and he's going to infuriate some Panthers fans. But when you're going up against the worst rushing defense in the NFL and you have one of the most electric running backs, emerging, you have to utilize him and you have to control the clock, especially on the road. Take that crowd out of it early. Keeping the pressure high. They beat the snot out of Tommy DeVito last week. 4 sacks. He was constantly on the ground. I thought at one point Kalijah Cansey had cracked his ribs all the way through to come out the other side of his body. Treat Bryce Young the way you treated Tommy DeVito and the way you've treated Jalen Hurts the last 3 times that you faced the Eagles. Continuously knock him around. That dude has gotten way too comfortable in the pocket over the last couple of weeks to the point that he is resembling a quarterback that I cannot make fun of on my show anymore. That needs to stop right now. So knock him around, take him to the ground. Vita, Kalijah, Yaya Diaby, Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David, all these guys bring the pressure all day and really put the Panthers behind the sticks. And then don't beat yourselves. This is a football team that the Buccaneers should beat. Do not shoot yourselves in the foot with turnovers, with stupid penalties, with negating first downs, with holding calls, giving free first downs with defensive holdings and pass interferences and roughing the passers and all that stupid stuff that teams do and then end up losing against a team that they should beat. That's it for the Bucs. Yeah, I think the familiarity with Canales is canceled out with his familiarity with Bowles. I don't think any team gets an advantage there. So just go out and may the better team win.
Yeah, the Panthers have not been a great run defense. You have that correct this season. In recent weeks, they have been better, even though they're still giving up 100 yards rushing every single week. They've been better in terms of tackling. And you look at some of the yards per attempt in these games, like Denver, they ran for 130, but it's not like Javonte Williams or McLaughlin, I think, is the other running back there. It's not like they were breaking out any big runs. Even last week, there wasn't a ton of big runs either for Kansas City and in the Giants, same kind of case. So they done a better job, at least, of making their opponents work for more of those yardages, but they're still giving up those yardages. And it'll be interesting to see how that pans out on Sunday against Bucky Irving, who I love them at Oregon, and it's cool to see him have success. I guess I wish it wasn't against Tampa Bay, but whatever. It is what it is. He's a good player. It was bound to happen eventually. And then, you talk about, too, on the other side of the ball, Carolina, they went to work with the offensive line this offseason, trying to rework that, signing Robert Hunt to a $100 million deal, Damian Lewis to a $69 million deal, bringing Austin Corbett, moving him to center, and they've only given up 20 sacks so far this year, after giving up 62, I think, last year, 65. It was something absurd. So that has been improved, and they have not necessarily had one of those games where they have looked like they are completely outflanked and have no idea who to block. Now, when blitzes have come, sometimes they have not had the best communication at certain times, and I know Todd Bowles likes a blitz, so we'll see if that will be the case on Sunday in this game. As far as Carolina goes, I mean, you talk about familiarity. Maybe it cancels itself out, but if it doesn't, Dave Canales has got to find a way to win the battle of familiarity against Todd Bowles, who hired him last year and sat there and watched his offense. And there was a comment made this offseason by Servassier Dennis, the linebacker there in Tampa, saying that Dave Canales' offense is a little blasé, that there wasn't a lot of motion and movement, kind of like what Liam Cohen does. So I wonder, I don't think Dave Canales is one of those guys that's going to take that personally, but possibly he thinks about that, and maybe he's asked about it depending on the result of the game on Sunday. So we'll see if he can win that battle of familiarity with the defensive coaching staff, but also the defensive players who went up against his offense a year ago. Number 2, they got to finish in the red zone. If they did that last week, James, I think they beat Kansas City. They were 2 for 6 in the red zone. Now, KC was only 2 for 5, but still, Carolina moved the ball down the field all day long on that Chiefs offense. I can only recall, I think 1, maybe 2 3-and-outs, which, as we talked about earlier, that is customary for a Dave Canales offense at some point in time in the game. But they were able to get the ball up and down the field for the most part. The Panthers are 10th in the NFL in red zone touchdown scoring percentage, which I actually was surprised to see. Tampa's 16th defensively in the red zone. So Carolina, been a better red zone offense, and the Bucs have been a better red zone defense, not by a wide margin, but certainly that's an area where if they want to win this game, they got to capitalize. If you look at the game they played in week 4 against Cincinnati at home, had to capitalize in the red zone to start that game. Maybe they win that game as well. So you got to end drives when you get there. You got to finish, something that Dave Canales said on Sunday after that game. And number 3, Bryce Young's got to continue to progress. He has played his best football in 3 consecutive weeks as a Carolina Panther. Thought he played well against the Saints. His numbers weren't great against New York, but he made some timely throws, helped them win that game, put him in position, of course, to win that. And then last week, I felt like that was the best performance he has ever had. Statistically, it was last year against Green Bay. But looking at the opponent, the defense, Spagnuolo, all of it, I thought that was the best performance that we've seen out of Bryce Young. And now he's going up against a team that has had, as you said, those defensive struggles, some injuries there in the secondary. Let's see. He's not going to have Jalen Coker, the rookie wide receiver, is going to miss his second week in a row. He's not going to have JT Sanders, his rookie tight end. He's got to lean on Adam Thielen, got to lean on Xavier Legette, and David Moore, who had a really good game last week. And he was there last year in Tampa. So we'll see if they can do that. So got to win the battle of familiarity, finish in the red zone, and Bryce Young needs to keep doing what he's been doing the last couple of weeks if they're going to win this game on Sunday. Any final thoughts from the Bucs perspective of things heading into this game?
Bold prediction. Whoever wins this game finishes ahead of the Falcons in the NFC South.
Oh, okay. So Carolina still has one more game left against Atlanta. So that is certainly positive because they win this, they go to 4-8. If they beat Atlanta, that probably brings them within like another game right there. Bold. I like that.
Go ahead and check mark Panthers over the Falcons. That's a dub.
There were like Carolina sitting here where it's Tampa twice over the next 6 weeks. That's a playoff contender. They got Philadelphia next week, who they're going to win their division again. They have Arizona as well. The only respite is the Dallas Cowboys, if you want to call that a respite after they just went out there and beat the Commanders on Sunday. So Carolina's going to be grinding to get to that.
That's a division game. You got to throw out the records in division games. That's why we're talking about how both of these teams are still in the playoff race now because the Falcons are falconing. But yeah, I mean, the Cowboys are terrible. I'm so glad that the Bucs get to face them in Jerry World on prime time.
Oh boy,
that's gonna be hilarious.
Will that be the latest Dallas beatdown there at home? Because those happen seemingly every time they play at AT&T Stadium.
I probably, but I think that's the weekend after Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they find a curtain so that their receiver doesn't get blinded by the sun. We'll see if Jerry's figured that one out just yet. But Locked On Panthers, Locked On Bucs. I'm Julian Council. He's James Yarcho. Check us out tomorrow on Friday. I'm going to do Keys to Victory, which I kind of went over. We're going to go more into it on Friday. James, what you got coming up on the show tomorrow?
Yeah, I go live on Fridays for the final preview. I'll be talking about my keys to victory as well, expanding on what we talked about, talking about injuries. And then, of course, I always give my predictions for the game in that one, my bold, my player, my score. So, yeah, live on YouTube, 5 o'clock.
Go ahead, check that out. And again, subscribe, follow our shows for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Julian Council. Follow him at JYarcho_Bucs over on Twitter or X, and maybe he's on Blue Sky as well. But again, tune in on Friday as we talk more about these games on Sunday afternoon. An important NFC South game. And it's Thursday. It's Thanksgiving. Hopefully everyone's had a great Thanksgiving. Thank you for getting away from your family to listen or watch our show and get into the spirit of an NFC South showdown on Sunday at Bank of America Stadium. But until then, be safe, be happy, be whole, and we will talk to y'all on Friday.